Part 23. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 221. Chapter 221 Li Feng's Collection Room. Xiaoling stumbled along the way and was taken into the Snake Palace by Li Feng. The light in the Snake Palace is dim, and the blue-black stone walls exude a damp and musty smell. Far and near, there were many torches and twisted sculptures, as well as oil paintings of different sizes and thick colors. The weird and gorgeous style was exactly the same as the painting she received after the Nebula song concert that day. These sculptures and these paintings are all made by me. Li Feng pointed at them with his long white fingers. Do you like them? He was like a happy child, grabbing her wrist and showing her around. Look, this painting is of a casino in the slums. I pulled out the intestines of the gatekeeper. This painting is of a serving. I was not considerate, so in anger I had someone bring a bucket of sulfuric acid and watched her take a bath in it. He explained the past piece by piece. It turns out that they are all real people. Xiaoling was disgusted by what she heard. The twisted sculptures and oil paintings in front of her formed countless purgatory-like scenes on earth. She felt that her breathing was getting faster and faster, and she couldn't hold it anymore. She held onto the green and black damp and sticky wall and retched. Why, are you feeling uncomfortable? Li Feng smiled very gently. It's because I didn't treat guests well. Someone is here dash. He shouted loudly. Soon, two beauties wearing translucent gauze fabric appeared in front of them, their heads lowered trembling slightly. Feng, Master Feng, please give me your instructions, they said with chattering teeth. Not many maids can survive in the Snake Palace, and they usually have to be replaced every 10.5 months. Every day in the Snake Palace, they walked on thin ice, for fear that Master Feng would cramp them and skin them if he was in a bad mood. Take Miss Ye down and wash her clean, Li Feng's feminine voice said with a smile. By the way, change into beautiful clothes and bring them to the collection room. The two maids trembled and responded meekly, reaching out to help Xiaoling. Xiaoling shook them off and looked up at Li Feng. What do you want to do? What color do you like? Li Feng asked with a smile. How about a red tube-top dress with a very thin waist that looks like a bouquet of roses? Or a white dress with lace? It looks like a bunch of roses. White lily. He walked up to her, raised her pale face and looked at it carefully. After a moment, he told the two maids, just the red dress, the most expensive one from the new autumn and winter haute couture series. Today is your big day. Li Feng was still smiling. Of course you have to wear your best. With a wave of her hands, the two maids dragged her down regardless of her resistance. In the spacious side hall, they helped her bathe, change clothes, and put on makeup with skillful and meticulous movements, dressing her up to look gorgeous and enchanting. Xiaoling was shocked and angry. What on earth are you going to do? The two maids lowered their heads, unbearable expressions flashed across their faces. Xiaoling took a deep breath. Tell me. They were just busy, combing her long hair, tying up exquisite and expensive hair bands, and putting on crystal necklaces, but they did not speak. The more this happened, the more Xiaoling's heart sank. I heard that Sushui was also dressed up before she died. She softened her voice and asked in a low voice, am I going to die? Li Feng didn't have any good intentions at all when he rescued me. He wanted to kill me with his own hands. The maids were silent, adjusting her skirt. Xiaoling looked out the window. In the depth of winter, there was a chill outside the window. Even the plum blossoms had their buds tightly closed and their branches were twisted and never bloomed. She said softly, if I die, can you tell Li Lei? She paused for a long time. The small buds of plum blossom slipped from before my eyes. Never mind. What else is there to say between them? There are too many entanglements, and at the last moment of life, there is nothing to say. A maid helped her stand up. Her originally stable arms shook slightly after hearing these words. She looked up at Xiaoling, and finally couldn't help the sadness in her eyes. "Miss Ye, the young master ordered you to be taken to the collection room. He must be planning to make you into a collection." "You." The maid originally wanted to advise her. If she had any last words, she should tell her quickly. But, so what if she confessed? They couldn't help her bring the message to anyone, otherwise, they would be the next ones killed by Li Feng. The secrets in the snake hall will never be spread. Xiaoling was silent, thinking all about Li Lei's bright and handsome face. It's really strange, after he took her so violently and violated her regardless of her will, why did she still miss him? He said, "Xiaoling, be my girlfriend." He said, "Xiaoling, don't be afraid, I'm here." He said, "Xiaoling, I will be responsible for you." However, no one could save anyone. When she was in danger, he was not there. She could only save herself, put away her unrealistic desires, and thought about how to escape from the snake palace. Two maids helped her stand up and walked out step by step. The light in the silent snake hall was dim, and even the torches burned silently. They walked through the long, damp, and narrow bluestone passage, wound their way down along the stone steps, and arrived at a space filled with all kinds of items. Li Feng stood in the middle wearing a gorgeous brocade robe and fine clothes. He saw her and opened his arms. "Beautiful lady, welcome to the Snake Palace collection room. You are the first guest to come here alive. No, not a guest, soon you will become one of these precious collectibles. Now, join me in admiring your neighbors, okay?" The last bit of luck in Xiaoling's heart was extinguished. The survival instinct made her brain work rapidly. Even if the possibility of survival was slim, she must do something to try. She stalled for time with Li Feng. "I am a living person, not a collection." "Living people?" Ha 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 ha. Li Feng seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world, and laughed wildly. "Who said that living people can't be used as collectibles? Little girl, you are too naive. I'll do it. Let me tell you, everything Xiaolia likes, whether it's people or anything else, will only become my Li Feng's collection in the end." That last sentence made Xiaoling's heart skip a beat. She felt that she still underestimated the extent of his perversion. "What did you say?" She suppressed the tremor in her voice and asked incredulously, "You mean, this collection room, are they all Li Lei's favorite things?" As far as the eye could see, in addition to some children's slingshots, firearms, broken maps, books, and antique fragments, she also saw many rabbit corpses soaked in formalin. Bird carcasses. Many animals still maintain the tragic state of their last moments before death, and their frightened eyes make people shudder. "Yes, these are all Xiaolei likes." Li Feng smiled, walked forward, and still raised Xiaoling's chin, "Including you, my little beauty." He lowered his head and sniffed. "They give it to you sprinkled with perfume. It's the smell of red roses that I like. Little beauty, you are mine. Come, follow me and take a good tour. Tell me, what kind of death do you like, and what kind of clothes do you like to be installed in the container?" End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 222. Chapter 222, Escape in Vain. What kind of death, what kind of container? Xiaoling doesn't want to think about it at all, she just wants to live well. She continued to stall for time, walking slowly step by step, following him to see the collectibles, pointing to a slingshot and asking, "Li Lei liked to play with this when he was a kid. Hasn't he told you?" A bright smile spread across Li Feng's lips. "Since he hasn't told you, why should I tell you? So what if he likes you? There are some things you will never know." Xiaoling was too lazy to argue with Li Feng about this. She just realized that this was not a good topic to delay, so she changed the question, "Where was that rabbit over there? How did it die?" This time, Li Feng opened up his chatterbox and introduced her to her eloquently. When Xiaolei was 5 years old, He picked up an injured rabbit in the back mountain. I asked him to give it to me, but he refused. He took it back, connected its broken bones, and nursed its injuries. Whenever the rabbit died, when the rabbit's injuries were all about to heal, I would secretly break its bones again. Ha, I probably did this 3 or 4 times. Xiao Lei cried and came to me for help. Li Feng was immersed in memories and did not notice that Xiaoling secretly took a few steps back and hid a broken dagger in the palm of her hand. Li Feng stroked the rabbit soaked in formalin across the glassware. Look at its front paws, which are still broken. What, you said its other paws are also broken? Then of course, later I snatched the rabbit, gouged out its eyes, cut off its ears, and broke every bone in its body. Didn't you see what Xiaolei looked like at that time, crying so hard that he had runny nose? Begging me with tears not to be so cruel. Haha, am I cruel? His voice was very soft, and he turned to look at Xiaoling. Do you think I'm cruel? You are not only cruel, you are simply perverted. Xiaoling cursed him in her heart, feeling nauseated as she looked at the rabbit with its eyes gouged out, leaving only empty eyes, its broken 3-petal mouth wide open, as if it was screaming silently. On the surface, she didn't dare to provoke him. Question: have you liked to bully Li Lei since you were a child? He is your biological brother. Why do you do that to him? Brother, Li Feng laughed again, his expression suddenly turned ferocious. He is a bitch. He is superfluous. He should not have been born in this world. He waved away the rabbit specimen, and there was a crash of glass. Broken, the formalin flowed out and covered the ground, and a fishy smell floated in the air. Xiaoling was startled and took a step back. Li Feng roared and screamed, he deserves to die. If his mother hadn't been pregnant with him, how could he have married into our Li family? My father is my mother's, and my mother's alone. Why did that marry a and have a little before her body is cold? Damn it! Damn it! Every time he said it, everything in the collection room was swept away, and soon the floor was in a mess. Xiaoling was frightened. The 2 maids who helped her in were already trembling and knelt down, not daring to express their anger. From Li Feng's frantic words, Xiaoling concluded that this child probably lacked love since childhood, which led to his abnormality. She didn't want to spend any more time with this pervert. When he turned around and smashed things, she ran towards the door. She has always had a good sense of direction. She has been secretly memorizing the route from the first moment she stepped into the Snake Palace. At this time, she ran all the way relying on her memory. The twisted sculptures and oil paintings in the narrow passage whizzed backwards around her, and the dawn was close. In front of you. Want to run? Li Feng rushed to catch up. The 2 maids screamed and chased after him. Xiaoling gasped, feeling the blood rushing all over her body and her heart beating fiercely, as if it was going to burst. Her physical strength is pretty good among girls, but Li Feng is a big man, and a young and strong man who has been around for a long time. Just when Xiaoling was about to push open the door of the Snake Palace, he caught up with her. Got her. He grabbed the hem of her flying skirt and with a tear sound, the entire skirt was torn in half. Xiaoling screamed and instinctively used a torn piece of cloth to protect her body. He had already bullied her and dragged her into his arms. You can't run away, he said. Xiaoling still held half of the dagger in her hand, which she had stolen from the collection room just now. She stabbed Li Feng without much thought. The sharp section cut open Li Feng's cheek, leaving a long trace. Long blood stains. Li Feng raised his hand and wiped it. You are the first woman who can make me see blood, he said softly, knocking off her dagger with his palm, and slapped her hard. Xiaoling was beaten so hard that she turned her head away. Half of her face was burning, swollen and numb, and there was blood coming from the corners of her lips. He looked at the blood on the corners of her lips and stuck out his tongue to lick it. It's even, he said with a smile. You surprised me, Xiaoling Lifeng gently stroked her injured cheek with his fingertips, causing her to gasp in pain. You look so weak, yet so stubborn. I changed my mind, that's it? It's so boring to make a specimen. Let's try your limit. Let's torture you until you kneel down and cry for mercy, and then make a video and show it to Xiaolei. It will be interesting. He thought his idea was wonderful, and laughed out loud as he spoke. Xiaoling was holding the fragment of her dress with one hand, and he was holding her with the other hand, so she didn't dare to move. The escape plan failed. Is she really going to die here? Regardless of her embarrassment, Xiaoling quickly started thinking about whether there was any other way. Li Feng reached out and grabbed her neck, dragging her deeper into the snake palace. Then, let's try it now. Xiaoling was about to suffocate when he pinched her. She kicked and beat her weakly, but to no avail. Just when she thought she was about to die, she suddenly heard the voice of a maid saying, "Feng, Master Feng, your phone number." The fierce wind stopped. The maid brought a mobile phone on an exquisite tray. Li Feng glanced at the number and picked up impatiently. "Hey, old man, what's the matter?" He had been disrespectful to Mr. Li since he was a child, but Mr. Li, who had always had a bad temper and was a man of his word in the family, somehow tolerated it. For so many years. Mr. Li said, "Ah Feng, let Ye Xingling go." "Let her go." Li Feng was stunned, looking at the woman who was pinching her neck and coughing awkwardly with extremely sinister eyes. "Old man, are you crazy? Don't tell me that you admit that she is Xiaolei girlfriend." Mr. Li said something on the phone. Li Feng's originally sinister and cruel eyes slowly calmed down. He hung up the phone, looked at Xiaoling, and smiled. "How interesting." He threw Xiaoling to the ground like a rag. "Xiaolei doesn't want you anymore. He has broken up with you and no longer recognizes you as his girlfriend. Xiaoling, you are so pitiful." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 223. Chapter 223 Liquidation. Heart-nourishing garden. The wind rustled the bamboo leaves. Mr. Li hung up the phone and looked at his grandson kneeling on the ground. "Get up, Xiaolei." Ah Feng promised to let that girl go. "Don't forget, go and issue a media statement now to tell everyone that you have been with that girl. Children break up." Li Lei knelt on the ground, his back lonely and straight. No matter how much he begged, Grandpa refused to admit Xiaoling's identity. Forced to have no choice, he had no choice but to break up with Xiaoling, in exchange for his grandfather saving Xiaoling's life from Li Feng. He was wrong. Taking Xiaoling back to the Li family was an extremely stupid decision. He wanted to give her a warm home and a happy and reunited spring festival, but he didn't expect that his grandfather's disapproval would make everything come to nothing. Maybe, he is not qualified to get her, and he can't even protect his own woman. What qualifications does he have to be a man? Li Lei took a deep breath and raised his eyes to look at Mr. Li. "I will send a letter to the media to tell everyone that we have broken up. But, Grandpa, before that, I have to ensure that Xiaoling leaves safely. If there is anything wrong with her." He was silent for a moment, and finally said, "Grandpa, my fate with the Li family is over." Mr. Li's pupils shrank suddenly. He didn't know that his grandson was so obsessed that he wanted to fall out with the family because of a woman with an unlucky fate. He was indeed right, that little star named Ye Xingling was a scourge, and had taken away the soul of his favorite grandson. "She will be fine," Mr. Li said coldly. "Although Ah Feng acts nonsense, he will never really disobey my orders. On the contrary, it is you, Xiaolei, who have been spoiled by me all these years, and you don't even know how generous you are." Li Lei heard the meaning of the old man's words, pursed his lips tightly, and did not answer. So what if I don't know how high the sky is and how high it is? That is his woman, the one who deserves to be loved and protected with everything he has. Li Lei stood up from the ground, walked out of the Yangzing garden through the rustling bamboo forest, and walked towards the tarmac. Er Mao was waiting for him outside Yangzing garden. When he saw him coming out, he followed him with his tail swung. One person and one leopard walked to the tarmac and watched a thinly dressed girl get on the helicopter. One of her cheeks was red and swollen, with clear palm prints on it. Was a strong wind hitting her? Li Lei's heart tightened and he wanted to rush out and hold her in his arms to heal her wounds, but he couldn't. As long as he continues to be with her, Mr. Li will not let her go. The old man is old and very stubborn about what he believes in. Li Lei believes that he can do anything. He watched her helicopter take off and gradually disappear into the sky. Master Lei, it's windy here, go back. A middle-aged man who looked like a butler walked up to him. He was the person serving Mr. Li, Uncle Lu. The old man was worried about his favorite grandson, so he sent Uncle Lu to follow him to have a look. Where's Sutang? Li Lei's voice was cold. Uncle Lu didn't expect him to ask this, and he was stunned before he answered, Miss Su is in her room. She has been in poor health these days. She had a wind on the tarmac again. She has a fever now. The servants are giving her. She's looking for a doctor. He asked tentatively, would you like to go over and see Miss Su? I heard that the fever is dangerous. Dangerous, Li Lei sneered. No matter how dangerous it is, can it be more dangerous than Xiaoling? Sutang clearly knew that Xiaoling was his thorn in the side, but he even drove Xiaoling away without authorization and placed a bomb under Xiaoling's helicopter. What use would such a subordinate have? If she's burned to death, she'll be taken out and buried. If she's not burned to death, there's no need to hang around in front of me. I can't afford such a self-assertive person. Since it was Grandpa who gave it to me in the first place, then she should be returned to me. Go to Grandpa. Uncle Lu is not well. Sutang was sent to Li Lei by Mr. Li. Although she has served Li Lei for so many years, everyone knows that she is the person whom Mr. Li trusts and relies on. Now, when Li Lei pushed the man back, he seemed to be angry with Sutang, but in fact, wasn't he just slapping Mr. Li in the face? The grandparents and grandsons were of extraordinary status, and when they got into trouble, Uncle Lu couldn't afford to get involved. Master Lei, this. He carefully considered his words, thinking about how to calm Li Lei's anger. Li Lei had already turned around and left. Master Lei, where are you going? Uncle Lu was frightened. He was really afraid that something would happen. He hadn't seen Master Lei get angry for many years. Now that he's acting like this, he needs to be punished one by one. This is a Chinese New Year, don't make the whole family uneasy by disturbing it. Uncle Lu was thinking that something big was going to happen, so he rushed to the Yangzing garden to report it to Mr. Li. Mr. Li was rarely drinking tea. He was staring blankly at a piece of drawing paper with a pen. On the drawing paper, there was a picture of Xiaoling's most beautiful appearance in her life. This girl. Mr. Li's paintbrush stayed under the corner of her eye, strangely. Where did the calculation go wrong? No matter how you look at it, she will not live to be 16. Old man, something bad has happened. Uncle Lu ran in panting, Master Lei, I'm afraid he is going to clean up the house. Just now he said that he would return Sutang to you, and now he went to Liming angrily courtyard. He summoned everyone under him to the meeting hall of Liming courtyard. Mr. Li slowly put down the brush in his hand. He was not surprised by the news brought back by Uncle Lu. If Xiao Lei doesn't clean up his family, he won't be the same person. Mr. Li said calmly, let him be. Ah, let him go. Uncle Lu was stunned. When the king is angry, he bleeds and floats on the ore. Regardless of whether the girl named Ye Xingling is qualified to be with Xiao Lei, those who are subordinates should not question his decision, let alone harm that girl behind his back. Mr. Li said, otherwise, where is the authority of the king? If Xiao Lei wants to clean up the house, let him do it. His dignity cannot be offended. The lines that Mr. Li did not say were, the dignity of the future head of the Li family cannot be offended. What about Sutang? Uncle Lu couldn't bear it. Everyone could see Sutang's admiration for Master Lei. Besides, this time, she only had trouble with Xiaoling after listening to Mr. Li's orders, but she had to bear Li Lei's overwhelming anger. Mr. Li said, bring her to me and raise her for a while. When she is well, she will slowly return to Xiaolei. Mr. Li likes Sutang very much and thinks she is a steady and loyal girl. The most important thing is that he knows the basics and is completely devoted to Li Lei. If Li Lei cannot find a suitable wife in the future, then Sutang would be a good candidate. In the Thunder Courtyard, Li Lei looked at the courtyard full of people. You have all been with me for a long time and know my temper. You all know what happened in the past 2 days. Some of you deliberately embarrassed Xiaoling. Li Qingshu, Li Fanhao, Li Zhen. He called the names one by one. Among them were Li Xiaoxing and several other parents of their children, as well as those who watched helplessly on the tarmac as Li Feng dragged Xiaoling away but did nothing. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 224. Chapter 224 Lonely New Year's Eve. Those people looked up at Li Lei. So far, although they feel a little guilty and feel that they should not do such a thing to an innocent girl, this is not as important as Master Lei's future and safety. They had long been prepared to be punished by Master Lei and were willing to do so. Li Lei saw their thoughts and sneered softly, very good, you are not afraid, are you? Yes, many of you are older than me and have higher seniority than me. It is wrong for me, Li Lei, to drive you around. Li Qingshu, you are my cousin, Li Fanhao, you are my third uncle, and Li Zhen, Li Wei, from today on, you are no longer my subordinates. Li Lei, you can go to whoever you like. Master. Uncle Ray. Xiao Lei. The crowd was startled and shouted to him. They were prepared to be punished by Li Lei, but they didn't expect that the punishment would be so serious, and they would be kicked out of the court directly. Xiao Lei, Li Fanhao said, we are all doing this for your own good. That girl is too weak and not suitable for you. Even if everyone uses some extreme methods, they are all loyal to you, no matter how you punish her. We are all fine, but don't drive us away. Yes, Master Lei, please spare us this time. Now do you know how to beg for mercy? Li Lei's eyes swept over each of his subordinates. Many of them had grown up watching him and had experienced countless storms and rains of bullets together. There was no one who could enter the Thunder Courtyard who could not be entrusted with life or death, so why would he let them go? However, for Xiaoling, something must be done. Xiaoling is my woman, Li Lei said, no matter whether Grandpa recognizes her or not, you recognize her or not, even if I make a statement to break up with her, she will always be the woman I value more than my life. I won't give anyone the slightest chance to hurt her. Li Qingshu, Li Fanhao, Li Zhen, Xiaoling almost died this time. If there is another time, I will let you all, including you. The family will pay for her life. This is not fair, a little girl's voice screamed, Uncle Lei, this is not fair. It was Li Xiaoxing. She and several children were also standing in the meeting hall, witnessing the turmoil caused by them. Li Lei looked at her indifferently, but his eyes were like thunder, making the little girl breathless. Li Xiaoxing plucked up the courage and said, Uncle Lei, it was me who caused the incident. A few of us children were in a practical class that day and randomly selected an easy target. You know that in the practical class on the island, whichever adult you bump into will be the one. No one has ever wanted revenge because he was tricked in a practical class. That's right, Uncle Lei, seeing that his father was about to be kicked out of the house, Li Xiaolong became anxious. It's just a very simple trap, and there is no danger. If it were any adult on the island, even if he fell into it, you will laugh it off. Who knew Miss Ye would react so strongly and weakly? My dad and the others also thought that she was not as good as any other kid on the island, so they were afraid that you would marry a useless woman, so they would oppose you. Together, the clear voices of the children echoed in the meeting hall, and no one scolded them. What they said was exactly what the adults of the Li family wanted to tell Li Lei. Women who were weaker than ordinary people were not qualified to be with him. Xiao Ling is not as weak as you think, Li Lei said. She was locked in a trap and received some kind of stimulus that made her insane and frightened like that. Xiao Ling is afraid of the dark, He shook his head and stopped talking. Recalling the scene not long ago in his mind, not long after the Xingyun Song Festival was going on, he rushed back from abroad to see her. At 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, she was sleeping soundly, but the lights in the bedroom were peacefully on. He thought she forgot to turn it off. Later, I entered her bedroom again after dark, but her light was still on. He didn't pay attention to it at first, but considering the trap incident this time, it seemed unusual. Was she unable to stay in a dark environment? Was she, once imprisoned in the dark? Li Lei didn't dare to think about it anymore and looked at the children. Yes, practical lessons are the rules on the island. But here, there is one rule that overrides all the rules, that is, no one is allowed to move. Xiaoling. Otherwise, I don't care about his practical lessons, his subordinates, or his family. I will make him look good. The whole room was silent. Rules are only made for those who are willing to abide by them, or those who are forced to abide by them. In front of a strong man like Li Lei, he is just a bunch of vulnerable bullshit. Uncle Lei, don't drive us away. Li Xiaoxing cried. You go. Li Lei was uncompromising. It concerned Xiaoling. He had to show the most severe and decisive attitude to let everyone know that dragons have scales and cannot be offended. Only in this way can Xiaoling's safety be guaranteed. He turned and left, leaving behind a crowd of people looking desperate. All expelled, Mr. Li was drinking tea in Yangzing Garden. Yes, Uncle Lu told Mr. Li everything that happened in Liming Courtyard. This child is worthy of my naming him with the word thunder. He is indeed thunderous and resolute, Mr. Li said softly. It's just that he has to do this for a poor girl. He shook his head and pondered for a moment. On the Chinese side, send 2 people to keep an eye on them and prevent them from resurrecting. Yes, Uncle Lu agreed, but he was sighing in his heart. What a bad fate. What kind of taboo did that little girl named Ye Xingling break? It doesn't matter what her background is or whether she is strong or weak. Only bad luck is the most deadly. How could he enter the Li family if he was alone and widowed? The old man is old and believes in this the most. There is no room for change. It's just a pity for Master Lei that he finally found the one he loves, but... New Year's Eve. It is snowing outside the tarmac of City S. Xiaoling got off the plane and wrapped herself in her thin clothes. The cold wind howled, and she stood alone in the open wind and snow without anyone around her. Same thing. On the day of family reunion, who would be alone like her? Her body was very tired, the tearing pain in her body and the scars on her neck caused by the strong wind were pulling her, making her staggering, as if she would fall down at any time. She barely supported herself and entered the lounge next to the tarmac. She fumbled and got herself a glass of hot water. Hands were numb from the cold, and she couldn't hold the water glass firmly. The warm water turned over and spilled all over her body. She looked at the mess on the ground and slowly squatted down in the silent hall, tears falling down one by one. Li Lei doesn't want her anymore. Pei Xian no longer recognized her. The world is so big that no one loves her or cares about her. Maybe she shouldn't have relived her life and should have died completely in that stage murder. In that case, she would always be the bright and dazzling Queen Xiaoling. Even if she fell into the darkness, she would never be people abandon or forget. Separate. Even in the worst moments of her previous life, she had never heard of these two words. At this moment, the world collapsed, and she suddenly understood how Pei Xian felt when she was about to leave. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 225. Chapter 225 Breakup News. Help Chu stepped on the ground, the sound of hollow footsteps. A woman wearing a burgundy woolen coat knelt down in front of Xiaoling. Tiaka, it's so ugly. Isn't it just a matter of losing love? Sister Maina took out a plain white tissue from her bag and handed it to Xiaoling. How about you have some potential, the sky hasn't fallen yet. Xiaoling raised her head with tears in her eyes and looked at the powerful and beautiful woman in front of her. She couldn't react for a moment. Why are you here? She asked with sobs. If I don't come, are you going to cry to death in the airport during the Chinese New Year? Sister Mai Na snorted coldly, and wiped Xiaoling's face with a tissue. What a beautiful girl, she is worth paying for. The man is crying like this? The boss doesn't want you because he has no sense. Let's break up. Let's find a better one and make him mad. Xiaoling wanted to cry again. Sister Maina sighed, ignoring the chill on the brick floor, half kneeling down, and hugging the petite and delicate girl in front of her into her arms. She received a call from Li Lei. During the Chinese New Year, she was playing mahjong with her mother and a group of relatives at home. Li Lei called her urgently and asked her to come to the airport to pick up Xiaoling. He said they had broken up and he was afraid Xiaoling couldn't think about it and something happened. Sister Maina asked Li Lei why, but he was unclear. Sister Maina was so angry that she scolded her big boss on the phone. On the night of New Year's Eve, it was snowing heavily outside. She pushed the all-color dragon he had got, picked up her bag and went out to find someone. Fortunately, Xiaoling just squatted in the airport crying and nothing happened. She gently stroked the long and scattered hair of the girl in her arms and softened her voice. Silly boy, how old are you? Who hasn't experienced several lovelorn moments? Be good, come home with me, and my sister will make some soup. I'll give you something to drink to drive away the cold, and you'll be fine if you get some sleep. Sister Maina is not only Xiaoling's manager, but in many cases, she is more like her sister, caring for her meticulously. Xiaoling gradually stopped crying in Sister Maina's arms, and her body became warmer before she remembered to ask, how do you know I'm broken in love? Sister Maina didn't want to tell her about Li Lei's phone call, for fear of arousing her worries again. He just said, don't worry about it. Come home with me now and have a good rest. Look at you. You are wearing so little. Don't catch a cold. The hospital is not open during the Chinese New Year. Xiaoling was exhausted both physically and mentally, and her brain was working slowly. When Sister Maina refused to answer, she didn't think much about it. She shook her head, I'm fine, I don't need to go home with you. Then where do you want to go? Sister Maina frowned. She was really worried about the little girl staying outside alone. Xiaoling is also at a loss. Where can she go? Parents' house? What else could those parents do besides calculating her money? Back to the apartment? There are too many memories about her and Li Lei in the apartment. For a moment, I felt like I had nowhere to go. Seeing her hesitation, Sister Maina persuaded her, go to my house. There are many adults and children, and it's lively. I joined the industry as a celebrity manager many years ago, and my relatives at home have seen a lot of singers and entertainers. Even if I bring don't worry, they won't make a fuss when you go back. For 2 or 3 days in a row, Xiaoling didn't get a good rest. She was forced to do something by Li Lei twice, and she experienced a life and death shock on the tarmac and in Li Feng's Snake Palace. At this moment, Xiaoling's brain was numb. She no longer wanted to think about it, nor did she want to spend any more effort to reject Sister Maina, so she nodded meekly. Sister Maina's heart was about to fall to the ground, so she helped her and got into the car. Mai's house is indeed lively, with adults and children gathered together, and everyone's face is filled with joyful smiles. When they saw Xiaoling go in, they gathered around to greet her. Although they were a little curious about celebrities, as Sister Mai Na said, they were much calmer than ordinary people's reactions. Everyone brought out a lot of melon seeds and candies for her to eat. Sister Maina smiled and said, "Okay, don't bother Xiaoling. She just got off the plane and is a little tired. Let her have a good rest." The Mai family then dispersed, each playing mahjong and preparing for the New Year's Eve dinner. Sister Maina tidied up a guest room, put Xiaoling to sleep, and said, "I'm right outside. If you need anything, call me." Xiaoling nodded quietly under the soft quilt, and Sister Maina felt relieved. Taking care of her, Sister Maina took a deep breath and found a quiet corner to call Lilei. "Where are you? I've settled in, so I don't need you to worry about it." "But Lilei, you asterisk it's too much of a thing to kick people out of their homes during the Chinese New Year. Even the most scumbag men are not as scumbag as you." "Xiaoling, what if there's something wrong with me? I also think you really love Xiaoling. If you were so irresponsible, you shouldn't have announced your relationship to the media in the first place." On the other end of the phone, Lilei remained silent. Sister Maina glanced at the TV in the living room, where the latest entertainment news was being broadcast. This afternoon, Lilei, the chairman of Tianyi Media, issued a public statement to the media, announcing that he and his artist Yexin Ling officially broke up. It is reported that Lilei took Yexin Ling back to the Li family to meet his elders. What happened? What happened that caused Yexin Ling to be kicked out of the Li family on New Year's Eve? The news broadcast was very sensational. The whole Mai family, who were originally bustling in the living room, fell silent. They watched the TV and unconsciously looked in the direction of the closed guest room door. Miss Ye was taken to Mai Na because she was heartbroken. Brought back. Their eyes were full of sympathy. The news broadcast continued. In the camera, the column reporter interviewed several passers-by at random. Passenger A said, "I already knew that they would not last long. This is the real world, not a fairy tale. There is no such thing as the legend of Cinderella and the prince." Passenger B, "The little star wants to be with a rich family, but he will be found out as soon as he takes him home." Passenger Ding, "Yexin Ling must have done something very excessive. Otherwise, a wealthy family like the Li family must pay great attention to etiquette and rules. It is impossible to evict people for no reason during the Chinese New Year." Passenger C, "Almost all comments are one-sided and add insult to injury." Sister Maina shouted into the living room, "Change the channel, don't let Xiaoling hear this, otherwise she will be even more sad." Relative slowly changed channels. Sister Maina angrily said to Lilei, "Look at the good things you have done. We broke up after we broke up, and you still posted to the media on New Year's Day. Lilei, can you be more careful and stop being so cold and heartless? You are like this, Xiaoling, how will you behave in the future? You are a man, you are the big boss, it doesn't matter if you dumped her, but have you ever thought about her? You will be laughed at wherever you go." Lilei remained silent and hung up the phone without saying a word. He really didn't know what to say, and he could faintly hear the sound of the news broadcast on the phone just now. At that moment, he wanted to rush forward and smash those people's mouths. But, what's the use? In the final analysis, it was him who hurt Xiaoling. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 226. Chapter 226 Encounter off the stage. Sister Mayna looked at the hung-up phone and was furious. "Lile, I will you." After the explosion, I almost dropped my phone. What she didn't know was that Xiaoling secretly heard all this from behind the guest room door. Sister Mayna's anger and helplessness, the innocuous chatter between adults and children in the living room, the laughter. She suddenly felt a tightness in her chest. All this was so unbearable. Xiaoling found a few pieces of clothing from the closet in the guest room, disguised herself, and left a note to Sister Mai Na telling her not to worry. She secretly left Mai's house unprepared. The streets were deserted, with the aroma of food and the sound of firecrackers coming from here and there. The lights in the residential area are bright, like isolated islands on the silent night sea. Xiaoling wrapped her coat tightly and walked aimlessly on the street. The world was so big that she didn't know where to find her own place. All happiness belonged to others, and there was only unforgettable loneliness and pain. And then it stayed in her heart to taste silently. She was walking and came to a building. Looking up at the high open-air stage, she stood firm. It turned out to be here. In her previous life, she was murdered at the concert commemorating the 10th anniversary of her debut. The stage remains the same, but it is no longer the lively scene it once was. Fine snowflakes cover the huge venue in pale white, with cold metal steps and fences and dim lights. Xiaoling looked at the stage for a long time. In her ears, the cheers of countless fans that day seemed to be heard again, as well as the last half of the heart-rending song. "Butterfly in a cage, flightless wings," she murmured, singing the lyrics softly, and stretched out her hand towards the high stage, as if to catch some broken phantom. Snapped. Snapped. Twice. Someone actually applauded, and the applause echoed faintly in the empty snow. Xiaoling was frightened. She turned around and saw a tall man sitting in the stands on the second floor. He was wearing a black coat and a long scarf. In the dim light, his face could not be seen clearly. Only his handsome outline was vaguely outlined, like a god. Xiaoling's breathing was stagnant. She knew who it was, the one person she would never forget even if he passed away and turned into ashes, Pei Zion. Isn't it New Year's Eve today? Why is he here? Xiaoling remembers the rules of the Pei family. This ancient wealthy family, like the Li family, requires the whole family to gather together for a reunion dinner. As the clan leader, Pei Zion used to attend on time every year, so that even in her previous life, she had to humiliate herself and follow him back to the clan every year. But this year, he came here regardless of the clan rules. The place of her death. Pei Zion stood up, his tall body blocking the dim light. He walked towards her step by step. "Why are you here, Ye Ling?" "I." She took 2 steps back, not knowing how to answer. Both emotionally and logically, it was inappropriate for her to appear here at this time. How could she explain it so as not to make him suspicious? Xiaoling felt that too many things had happened in the past 2 days and she was too tired. She could no longer think of any perfect excuse. She simply gave up on herself and said, "I'm heartbroken." Everyone in the world knew that she was lovelorn, abandoned by Lile, and ridiculed by all the media and the public. Pei Zion obviously heard the news and was not surprised. "Really? That's really pitiful." He walked up to her step by step and looked down at her pale and haggard face. "Every time I see you, you show your teeth and claws. Why did you do this time?" His voice was low, as if he was stating an ordinary fact. Hearing it in her ears made her want to cry. Once, she was arrogant and willful under his protection. Even if her finger was pricked by a rose thorn, she would cry to him for a long time with tears in her eyes. But now, she has been so wronged, but she still pretends to be nonchalant. He said coldly, "It has nothing to do with you." Pei Zion fell silent. Today is New Year's Eve, and for some reason, he doesn't want to go back to the clan and fight with those old and immortal people. He remembered that every time during the spring festival, Xiaoling would try her best to prevent him from going back, whether she lost her temper or acted coquettishly. However, for the sake of that authority and responsibility, every year, he would drag and coax her away. Take it back to the Pei family. Obviously knowing that she doesn't like it. Obviously knowing that she has been wronging herself. Pei Zion regretted it very much. Once, even just once, why couldn't he follow Xiaoling's wish and take her to climb a snow-capped mountain to watch fireworks, wake up in a romantic travel place in the morning, and say Happy New Year? Now, he can only be alone here, looking at the stage where she fell, feeling sad. Xiaoling turned her face away from him, fearing that she would not be able to restrain her weakness if she looked at him again. She stepped back step by step, turned around and was about to leave. It's right here under the empty stage, among the fine and falling snowflakes, she heard Pei Zion's lonely voice. I watched her standing on the stage singing, so beautiful, so dazzling. Suddenly it became dark, and she left. His voice was hoarse. Xiaoling was shocked and stopped in her tracks. This was the first time she heard him talk about the disaster, the first time she heard him remember her in such a sad and desolate tone. Pei Zion did not look at her, but still looked at the stage. I punished the murderer, asked those two people to pay for her life, and asked those two families to be wiped out, so what? She will never come back. Who? She turned around and asked, who is the murderer? She never knew who killed her. In the darkness, the knife stabbed into the back of her heart was so deep that she was killed with one blow. Is it really the Wang family as she guessed? Not long after her death, the Wang family declared bankruptcy and disappeared. Sure enough, Pei Zion said, Wang Jingzhou. This was Wang Jingguan's brother. He hired a murderer to kill someone. He pulled the switch in the power distribution room. Taking advantage of the darkness, the murderer he bribed rushed onto the stage and killed Xiaoling. That's all. That's it. Pei Zion chuckled sarcastically. My little Ling was killed by such a clumsy method. Hearing what he said, Xiaoling felt relieved. Great, it's the Wang family, not Xiaoyu. Even if their sisters turned against each other, she really didn't want the person who put her to death to be the sister she had tried so hard to protect. Pei Zion, on the other hand, she is dead, why should he miss her? When he was alive, he was so cruel to her, but then he pretended to be affectionate after she died. She mocked him coldly. If you were nice to her, didn't provoke the Wang family, and didn't get engaged to Wang Jingguan, then the Wang family wouldn't kill Xiaoling in order to avenge Wang Jingguan. How do you know? Pei Zion's eyes suddenly became sharp and he stared at her. How do you know that the Wang family's revenge on Xiaoling was because of Wang Jingguan's death? His relationship with Xiaoling was a secret. When he imprisoned Xiaoling, the public only thought that Xiaoling was unwell and recovering from illness, or that it was a ban. He had completely determined the cause of Wang Jingguan's death. In front of public opinion, Xiaoling was not involved at all. How could the girl in front of her know that the Wang family was angry with Xiaoling because of Wang Jingguan's death? Xiaoling's heart skipped a beat and she realized that she had let something slip. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 227. Chapter 227. It seems like an old friend is here. Pei Zion took a few steps forward, and Xiaoling backed away warily. His deep voice, tell me, how do you know? Her mind went blank, and she blurted out in a hurry, Li Lei said it anyway. Big Boss Li was celebrating the Spring Festival on an overseas island, so she didn't believe that Pei Zion would really ask him. Li Lei, Pei Zion's eyes dimmed, he's checking me. Xiaoling remembered that Li Lei vaguely mentioned that he was investigating Pei Zion before, and also warned her that Pei Zion was too dangerous and told her to stay away. Xiaoling didn't know how far Li Lei's investigation had gone, but she wanted to get over the current difficulties first anyway. You are his competitor, his enemy in the market, it is normal for him to check you. She tried to remain calm. Really, Pei Xian's voice was very calm. After a while, he suddenly asked, "Isn't it for you?" Xiaoling was startled for a moment, then turned her head and said, "We broke up under the dim street lights and fine snow." Her expression was pale and dejected. Her thin woolen coat was fluttering in the night wind, and there was a smooth wind and snow. He poured it down her neck. Pei Xian frowned imperceptibly. "Why are you out wearing so little?" He took off the long scarf he was wearing, stretched out his hand, and wrapped it around her neck. As he got closer, he saw a purple bruise on her neck, as well as dots of hickeys, which were shocking on her fair skin. "Who did it?" His voice suddenly became deeper. For some reason, the moment he saw these traces, his heart throbbed violently, and his nameless rage ignited, wanting to tear the person who hurt her into pieces. Xiaoling subconsciously covered the ugly marks with her hands. He grabbed her wrist and pulled her hand off despite her resistance. Those hideous and terrifying traces were exposed to his sight again. His eyes were cold. Lilei, did Lilei kiss her, quarrel with her, pinch her and torture her, and finally drive her out of the house? He imagined the scene at that time in his mind, and his nameless anger became even more intense. Xiaoling bit her lip and said nothing. Does it matter who did it? Anyway, she has nothing to do with the Li family anymore. Her wrist was held by him, with a familiar touch and warm temperature. She wanted to throw it away, but for some reason she couldn't muster the strength, so she saw Pei Xian slowly wrapping the long scarf around her with his other hand, wrapping it around and around to cover the traces. "Go to my place, I'll help you deal with it." His voice was gentle. She shook her head, not wanting to involve her too much. The wrist that was held tightened. Ignoring her resistance, Pei Xian pulled her out of the stage. On the deserted street, a black Rolls-Royce was parked silently, covered with plain white snowflakes. He pulled Xiaoling into the car and told the driver to drive. Uneasiness and fear arose in Xiaoling's heart. "What do you want to do?" He glanced at her. Xiaoling started to open the car door. "Let me out." The memories he imprisoned came back, making her panic. It was clear that a lifetime had passed, and she knew that he could no longer recognize her, but she couldn't help but be afraid. Her panicked look made his heart ache. I think of Xiaoling, who had this look on her face countless times during the year she was imprisoned before her death. She was frightened and helpless. She had endured too much harm and torture but didn't know how to get rid of it. If there was a regret medicine in the world, he would not do that to her. At least in the last year of his life, he would make her happy and stop crying secretly behind his back. Pei Xian's thoughts were wandering far away. At that time, Xiaoling did not dare to cry in front of him. People with Stockholm Syndrome will only be grateful to their abusers, but will not be afraid or cry. Whenever she showed any sign of pain, he would think that the training was not good enough, and he would torture her even harder. Over time, he would even deprive her of the right to cry. On the bed, she didn't dare to cry out in pain, and within his sight, she didn't dare to cry. The villa where she was imprisoned was equipped with many surveillance cameras, with 360-degree coverage and 24-hour surveillance. Once, he was a little confused. Why did Xiaoling take so long to take a bath every time? It wasn't until she fell from the stage and died, and he could only rely on those surveillance videos to live in memories, that he discovered that every time she took a shower, she would bury her face in the water for a long time, and her thin shoulders would twitch slightly. Every time before leaving the bathroom, she would carefully remove the red marks under her eyes. Pei Xian hated herself. How far had she been pushed to make her even grieve so tremblingly? If he was given another chance, if she could survive. Xiaoling, his Xiaoling, deserves the best and all tender care. He looked at the girl who looked like Xiaoling in front of him and softened his voice. "Don't be afraid, I won't hurt you, I promise. I just want to take care of you. These words reached Xiaoling's ears, causing her panicked movements to slowly calm down. She turned to look at the man in front of her, and he said that he just wanted to take care of her. Thinking of their first encounter many years ago in her previous life, the little Xiaoling timidly raised her head and asked the tall man next to her, "Brother Pei, why did you adopt me?" How did he answer at that time? Same as today, with a low mellow and gentle voice, "I just want to take care of you." Tears oozed from the corners of his eyes. "You're lying," she suppressed the cry in her voice. "I'm not going to lie to you," he said softly, "you are wearing so little and you are injured on your neck. You will definitely catch a cold standing in the wind and snow like you just did. Come back with me and I will let the family doctor treat you. Let's take care of your injuries and ask the nanny to make something for you to eat. You're just celebrating the Chinese New Year, just to show me some face." I haven't seen him speak in such a low voice for a long time. Just like many years ago, every time she lost her temper, he would patiently coax her. Maybe it was because she was too tired today, or maybe it was because people tend to miss the past when they are weak, so she nodded by accident. Pei Ziyan smiled softly. Xiaoling stopped clamoring to get out of the car, and for a while, the car became silent. The two of them were not familiar with each other at first, at least in this life. Yasin Ling was very unfamiliar with Pei Ziyan. After calming down, she didn't know what to say. The air conditioning in the Rolls-Royce cabin was as warm as spring. The comfortable form and the soft leather seats beneath her made Xiaoling relax more and more. Unconsciously, she closed her eyes. Eyes fell asleep. The first good dream in the past few days. She dreamed of the brilliant afternoon sunshine and irises blooming everywhere when she was in the orphanage many years ago. She won a fight with several older children, turned around and looked up to see a handsome and majestic man standing behind the floor-to-ceiling windows on the second floor. Like a god, he stretched out his hand to her, "Xiaoling, let's go home with me." In her sleep, she tilted her head slightly. Her little face as big as a palm rested on the shoulder of the man next to her. The soft woolen jacket was probably very comfortable, so she rubbed it unconsciously, adjusted her posture, and fell into a deeper sleep. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 228. Chapter 228, A New Beginning. The shoulders were slightly heavy. The weight was obviously negligible, but it made Pei Ziyan's whole body tense. This girl is really similar to Xiaoling. When she is tired, she likes to lean on his shoulder. She looks defenseless when she closes her eyes. The feather-light touch on his shoulder seemed to weigh more than 1,000 pounds. Pei Ziyan did not dare to move for fear of waking her up. Beside him, the girl was sleeping peacefully. She didn't know what she was dreaming about, and her frown gradually relaxed. Snowflakes were flying outside the car window, and the night scene flew by. "Boss, we're here," it was the driver's voice, and the car stopped in front of a villa. This is one of Pei Ziyan's properties. The garden is planted with cedars and ivy, and it is lush and green even in the season. The housekeepers and servants in the villa were already lined up in front of the door, ready to welcome their master back. Pei Ziyan made a silent gesture. On my shoulder, the pretty girl was still sleeping. Maybe it was the comfortable temperature in the car, or maybe she had dreamed of something beautiful, but her originally pale face gradually turned red. She still had his scarf wrapped around her neck, with her face half buried in it, breathing slowly like a little bear in winter. He couldn't help but smile and stretched out his hand to straighten the scarf. "Bring a blanket," he whispered to the driver. The driver quickly brought a blanket. Pei Ziyan covered Xiaoling and skillfully pressed the corners of the blanket to prevent air from getting in. "Instruct the driver to close the door." He didn't dare to get out of the car, for fear that she would wake up if he moved. If she woke up, She wouldn't be willing to continue resting on his shoulder, right? Then his little memory and remembrance of Xiaoling, and his extravagant hope of pretending that Xiaoling is still alive, will be shattered. He would rather just let her lean on him forever, regardless of the pain in his shoulders. Seeing that he was not coming out, the driver respectfully and carefully closed the door and whispered a few words to the housekeeper. The housekeeper in decent clothes looked in the direction of the car, waved the servants who were waiting in line to disperse, and returned to the villa. Only a Rolls-Royce covered with snowflakes was left, parked alone in the silent New Year's Eve. Xiaoling slept deeply. When she woke up, a sliver of blue-gray sunlight appeared on the horizon. She rubbed her eyes hazily and found that she was in a familiar car. The interior decoration of this Rolls-Royce was customized by her herself. The leather armchairs with the bow-tie rabbit pattern were probably the most famous in the world. Unique. She was not very awake. In a trance, she seemed to have gone back to the past, and said inarticulately, "Good morning, son." Suddenly, she stopped. Turning her head, she saw that the tall man in her memory was looking at her with dark eyes. It was not the familiar doting look, but it was sad and happy, sad, nostalgic, but complicated and unpredictable. The alarm bells in Xiaoling's heart rang loudly, and she swallowed back the sound of Zi Hung. She remembered what time it was now, and what her identity was now. It was so dangerous, and she almost betrayed the gang. Xiaoling gave a stiff smile and said, "Good morning, Mr. Pei." She quickly distanced herself from Pei Ziyan and retreated to a place close to the car door on the other side. Pei Ziyan looked at her guarded look with a complicated expression, and reached out to rub his shoulder, where she had used it as a pillow all night. The blood flow was not smooth, and half of his body was numb from the drag. However, as soon as his hand touched his shoulder, he paused, put it down and spread it out to see, saliva on one hand. Even her tendency to drool while sleeping is exactly the same as his Xiaoling's. Xiaoling looked at the pool of saliva and felt embarrassed. I didn't mean it, really." She was afraid that Pei Ziyan would settle a score with her. This man was very particular. He didn't like her drooling all over him in the past. He would wipe her with a tissue with an unhappy look every time, which was heartbreaking. But this time, Pei Ziyan was not unhappy. He just retracted his hand as if nothing had happened and asked Xiaoling, "Did you sleep well last night?" When he mentioned it, Xiaoling noticed that she slept on someone's shoulder last night, and she actually slept all night long. She cursed in her heart why she didn't know how to be alert. Is Pei Ziyan's shoulder so easy to sleep on? On the one hand, she also made a frightened look in front of him. "I'm sorry, I've been too tired these 2 days, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." Her polite words made him frown. Seeing that he was unhappy, Xiaoling became even more uneasy. "Well, how about I leave first? Look, it's already dawn." Pei Ziyan frowned even more. "You are not allowed to leave." "Ah." Pei Ziyan stretched out his hand and wiped her wet saliva with the long scarf around her neck. He couldn't stand the stupid look on his face anymore. "I promised to treat your injury, and you haven't eaten anything all night." She then remembered what she had come to do yesterday. Subconsciously, he reached out and touched the wound on his neck. There was still some swelling there. Li Feng's hand was so strong that her throat was still a little uncomfortable. She wondered if she had injured her trachea. There was a burning tingling sensation when she breathed. About the unpleasant things on the Li family island, the thought suddenly came to mind again. Her expression darkened. "It's a new year suddenly," I heard Pei Ziyan say. Xiaoling looked up at him. "A new beginning." He looked at the swollen scar on her neck with a slight pity in his eyes. "Yes, Ling, do you want to come to Emperor? No matter how bad our Emperor entertainment is, we will never bully people like this. Won't you bully people like this?" Xiaoling was startled and suddenly felt ridiculed. Wasn't she bullied enough in her previous life? That was a nightmare countless times more terrifying and despairing than the one encountered in the Li family. So much so that it is like a scar imprinted on my heart. Thank you for your kindness, Boss Pei Xiaoling said politely but unfamiliarly, but, I'm sorry, I refuse. She will never return to the Emperor, even if she wanders around the world homeless, she will never go back to the deepest nightmare. An expected rejection. However, Pei Xian's eyes still dimmed. How many times? I don't know how many times she has rejected his invitation. Pei Xian was in a very irritable mood, and for a brief moment, he had the idea of kidnapping her again, just like the time he poisoned her, to force her to his side and do whatever it took to make her his. Just like he did to many girls who looked like Xiaoling. They may not all be willing to be his bed partners. However, as long as he is willing, he will use various means to make them surrender. However, looking at the cautious and guarded look of the girl in front of him, he couldn't make a move. Ever since she sang the song Butterfly in the Cage, there seemed to be something different. She looked too much like Xiaoling, more than anything he had ever encountered before. Everyone was like, he couldn't bear to torture and destroy her anymore, he just wanted to compensate her for all the things he wanted to do for Xiaoling but was too late to do. He suppressed the irritability in his heart. At least, leave Tianyi, he looked at her gently and said patiently, a new year, a new beginning. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 229. Chapter 229 Wisteria Hotel. Xiaoling had never thought about leaving Tianyi, but when she heard what he said, her heart moved. Yeah, for her now, what's the point of staying in Tianyi? From now on, it will only increase the embarrassment to see Li Lei when he raises his head but not when he lowers his head. But on the surface, she just said calmly, that's my business, so I won't bother Mr. Pei to worry about it. Not only did she want to distance herself from Li Lei, she also didn't want to provoke Pei Xian again. Pei Xian's eyes darkened. He controlled his emotions, invited her out of the car, and called a family doctor to look at the injury on her neck. Xiaoling recognized this villa. It was not her and Pei Xian's home in their previous life, but just a vacation villa. The furnishings inside have not changed much. In the corner of the living room, there are several porcelain sculptures of small tabby cats that she placed haphazardly. She stopped looking at the familiar objects and sat down on the sofa. The family doctor soon arrived. He was also an old acquaintance, the Dr. Wang they were used to. Dr. Wang checked her carefully, put down the equipment, and said, the throat is a little swollen and there is internal bleeding. It is not a serious problem for ordinary people. But Miss Ye is a singer. She needs to pay attention to her health for a period of time. I will prescribe some medicine for you. Take it on time, and be careful not to eat spicy food. Xiaoling nodded. Pei Xian asked, she was caught in the snow yesterday. Did she catch a cold? Dr. Wang smiled and said, sir, don't worry, Miss Ye is in good health and everything is normal. Pei Xian felt relieved and dismissed Dr. Wang. He left Xiaoling to have breakfast, and ordered his servants to make nutritious and easy to digest vegetable porridge. He greased the sliced bread for her and broke it into small pieces. In the morning light, Xiaoling looked at his focused look and remembered that he was so considerate many years ago, thinking carefully about everything and taking good care of her. She thought of Li Lei again. Different from Pei Xian, Li Lei rarely hired servants and did everything by himself, cooking for her. But Li Lei was always carefree, asking her to help in the kitchen, and laughing at her for not peeling the tomatoes well and not washing the vegetable leaves cleanly enough. The kitchen left many of their noises and laughter, which I am afraid will never be repeated again. Xiaoling only felt sour in her mouth, and the soft and delicious vegetable porridge in front of her became so difficult to swallow. She had a hasty breakfast and said goodbye to Pei Zion. Pei Zion saw that he couldn't keep her, so he sent a car to see her off and asked, "Where are you going?" Xiaoling thought for a while. Since she had decided to leave Tianyi, there was no point in meeting Li Lei's apartment. She said, "Let's find a hotel first. The Wisteria Hotel is good. I'll stay there for a few days." Pei Zion felt better after hearing that she said she wouldn't go back to the apartment, and sent her to the Wisteria Hotel. Xiaoling thanked him, rejected his offer to pay for her, and checked in alone. This is a 5-star hotel with good security and privacy. It is liked by many people in the entertainment industry. It was the Spring Festival, and there were only a few guests staying in the hotel. Xiaoling chose a room with the best location and settled down. The phone ringtone is ringing like crazy. Xiaoling pressed the answer button. It was Sister Meina. "Xiaoling, where have you gone? I'm so worried." She thought Xiaoling had fallen asleep, so she played mahjong with her 7 aunts and 8 aunts all night. "After killing everyone and winning a lot of money, I was shocked when I opened the guest room door this morning." Xiaoling disappeared without knowing when, leaving only a note. Xiaoling said, "I'm fine, Sister Meina, don't worry." How can Sister Meina be relieved? Ask her where she is now. Xiaoling reported the hotel address. "Wait for me." Sister Meina hung up the phone and hurried to the hotel in her car. Just kidding, a woman who is lovelorn is the easiest to think about. How can she leave Xiaoling alone? It is not easy for her to be an agent. She is as worried as a nanny taking care of a kindergarten child. Xiaoling felt so sorry that she asked Sister Meina to come over to see her on the first day of the new year. But she couldn't stop Sister Meina, so she had to let her go. Sister Meina hurriedly arrived at the hotel and saw with her own eyes that she was indeed fine, and then she felt relieved. "What did you do last night? Why did you leave so secretly? Is my home uncomfortable? Why not stay in a hotel?" She felt unbalanced. Xiaoling didn't want to cause trouble and didn't tell her that she was with Pei Zion last night. Therefore, Sister Mai took it for granted that Xiaoling went directly to the hotel to get a room after leaving Mai's house last night. Xiaoling explained as tactfully as possible, "It's a bit noisy outside the guest room, I want to be quiet." Sister Meina thought too much, fell silent for a moment, and asked, "Have you heard everything? Yesterday's TV news was a bit loud." Could it be that Xiaoling heard the big reports in the news? Xiaoling smiled bitterly, "Sister Meina, I'm not as fragile as you think. So what if the news all over the world is reporting on this matter? There is no one who has not been stabbed in the world, and which star has not been slandered by hackers. Maybe, I will become even more popular after this." Time she was not trying to comfort Sister Meina, but she was really open-minded. In her previous life, she was a big star and a queen of music that dominated the country. Have you ever experienced wind and waves? News of this level is trivial. Sister Meina was doubtful, "Is everything okay?" "It's okay, I'm just afraid of the noise, I have a little headache, and I want to have some peace and quiet." Xiaoling didn't tell her that she planned to leave Tianyi. Why would she bother such a good manager during the Chinese New Year? It's not too late to wait until after the New Year to officially start working. Sister Meina chatted with her for a while and confirmed that her mood was stable. The family called again and urged Sister Meina to go back and play mahjong. The gang of nuns and 6 women who lost to her yesterday were working hard to win back. Without her, they would not give in. So Xiaoling said, "Go back." Sister Meina then left reluctantly. The world fell silent. Xiaoling took out her phone and looked at it. The communication records were silent. She smiled with a sense of loss. What else were she expecting? It has been 2 days, and even Sister Meina knows that she is caring about her all the time, but where is that man? Li Lei. After forcing her so violently, and then breaking up without a word of explanation. Haven't even given a phone call to express condolences. Her sunshine was extinguished. Xiaoling moved her slender white fingers, paused for a long time on the column of Li Lei's name in the address book, and pressed the delete key. Slept very darkly in the hotel. During this period, she received several calls. The parents of the Ye family came to ask for money, the grandma of the Ye family came to ask how she was doing, Luo called to express condolences about her breakup, and there were also New Year's calls from Lu Tao and Bai Murong. Xiaoling replied one by one, but her heart was still empty. The Spring Festival flew by in a few days, and then came the event that attracted worldwide attention. Valentine's Day, Dog Cruelty Day. The Wisteria Hotel is bustling with activity. The environment here is elegant and stylish. Many couples like to come here to spend a romantic night together, including some of Xiaoling's old acquaintances. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weiniang. Chapter 230. Chapter 230 Photos in the Morning Light. Xiaoling has maintained a good habit over the years. That means getting up every morning to practice singing and dancing without losing any of your basic skills, rain or shine. Therefore, since she has been in the music scene for 2 lifetimes, no matter how criticized she is about her temperament and status, no one says there is anything wrong with her singing level or dancing skills. Her professionalism is enough to silence everyone, whether they are love rivals or rivals. Few people are as dedicated and hard-working as she is. Even though she was staying in a hotel and couldn't perform exercises in the suite, she still found a gym in the hotel and exercised on time. She had become accustomed to staying in the gym these days. There was no one in the yoga room. She practiced dancing for a while and then came out and went to the nearby executive lounge for breakfast. Today is Valentine's Day. The waiter gave each guest a small box of beautifully packaged chocolates and said Happy Valentine's Day with a smile. When it was her turn, the waiter was stunned, put the chocolate into her palm, and said, "Ms. Yeah, Happy Valentine's Day. If the old one doesn't go away, the new one won't come. You don't have to be too sad." In such festivals, the people who suffer 10,000 more injuries than singles are the singles who are in love. Xiaoling looked at the chocolate in her hand and smiled bitterly. That's the bad thing about being a star. The whole world knows about falling out of love. Speaking of which, she hasn't spent Valentine's Day with Li Lei yet. They were not together at this time last year, but they broke up spectacularly at this time this year. With his thoughts drifting away, he suddenly heard a voice, "Yes, Yingling, Miss Yet." She turned her head and saw a woman wearing a crisp shirt and casual trousers standing in front of her. Her short hair was cut very thin and she looked neutral and handsome. Seeing her confused look, the androgynous beauty smiled, "Don't know me?" "That's right, we have never met before. Let me introduce myself. I am Su Fuxian, a reporter from Star Entertainment Weekly and a good friend of Sister Mai Na." She stretched out her hand to Xiaoling. Xiaoling stretched out her hand to shake her hand, and then she remembered that she was Sister Maina's journalist friend. During the quarrel with Xiaoyu last year, she even wrote a report to support her. Xiaoling showed a friendly smile, "Miss Su, nice to meet you. You are Maina's darling, just call me Fuxian." Su Fuxian's smile was sharp and clear, "I didn't expect to meet you here. I am doing a real-time exploration program for Valentine's Day. How about, let me take 2 pictures photo?" Xiaoling asked her what program it was. Su Fuxian explained that he just picks some places where celebrities and entertainers like to hang out, squats there, sees who they can bump into, and gossips about how they spend Valentine's Day. This is a dynamic column. After the photo is taken, it will be uploaded to the internet immediately, and the click rate is very high, Su Fuxian said. "How many photos?" "It will be very helpful to increase the popularity." How can she increase her popularity even if she is already heartbroken? In these days when pink bubbles are popping up all over the streets, can she speak for the majority of lovelorn dogs? Xiaoling laughed at herself in amusement, and then she declined Su Fashan's proposal, so she listened to what she said. Don't refuse, Xiaoling. You have to know that there are more than one or two groups of reporters staying on Valentine's Day. Not everyone has the professional ethics like me and is willing to take hard photos of you. Many reporters are hiding behind the door in the restaurant. Just take 2 sneak shots in the corner, make the person look ugly, and add a sensational title, and you won't even have time to cry. Su Fuxian blinked. Xiaoling, we are all friends of Sister Mai Na, I am. It's really for your own good. It's not easy to be a reporter these days. You also have to develop an eloquent tongue. Xiaoling sighed. Su Fashan smiled. Who says it's not the case? Seeing that you still have the energy to joke, you must have gotten over the shadow of a broken relationship. Let's take a few photos of you looking good and tell those who want to see your joke that you have nothing to do with this matter. How about letting them get angry when I'm in a miserable state? They think I'm embarrassed, Xiaoling asked. No, Su Fuxian said, the little star fell in love with the boss and his dream of becoming a rich man was shattered. He was kicked out of the house on New Year's Eve. Do you think he was embarrassed? Xiaoling, haven't you watched the news these days? The news is really ugly. I think if you don't show up to clear your name, there may be news that you committed suicide for love tomorrow. Xiaoling. Well, Su Fashan's words touched her sore spot. She, Xiaoling, hated to see people who hated her feel proud most in her life, not to mention that this time they were laughing at her. Her scarred side will only be left to be licked by herself at night. As for outsiders, oh, that means they must be slapped hard in the face. Don't you think she is in despair? Then let her show them that she is alive and well and still flying high. Xiaoling agreed to Su Fashan's suggestion and asked her to take some photos. Su Fashan's photography skills are excellent, and she captures light, shadow, and angles well. In the morning light through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she sits quietly at the dining table covered with white tablecloth, drinking coffee with her eyebrows lowered, her peaceful look, and her crow-feather eyelashes cast under her eyes. It casts a faint shadow, adding a bit of elegance and mystery. Su Fashan finished the work with satisfaction and sent the photo back to the official Weibo account of Star Entertainment Weekly with the caption, "A person's Valentine's Day is still romantic, there is always a kind of woman, and wherever she is the scenery." Not long after, the photo was filled with comments and likes. Fans who were suffocated by the breakup news a few days ago came to life one after another. It was so great to see that their beloved idol was okay. They retweeted this Weibo post in large numbers and beat those with beautiful and peaceful photos. The face of the scoffer. Look at our Xiaoling, isn't it just a matter of breaking up with a man? What's all the fuss about? Xiaoling looks so good and is eating breakfast leisurely. It seems that she and Boss Li are not sure who is going to dump who. Snort. Countless blessings, well done Xiaoling. Congratulations to Xiaoling for returning to the single aristocracy. Xiaoling, we support you. Here, fans are resurrected with full health. Over there, some people are not doing well. Gulin, who stayed at home and read the entertainment news for several days, felt very comfortable watching the public sympathy and ridicule for Ling every day, but what happened today? On such a big day as Valentine's Day, at such a good time that can cause tons of harm to a lovelorn dog, why, that woman named Ling, counterattacked. See photos. She looks really good. Actually, Gulin didn't know. It was a misunderstanding. This was definitely a huge misunderstanding. Xiaoling has been very haggard these days, but people are always more energetic in the early morning than at other times. She has just finished dancing and exercising, so it is normal for her to have some blood on her cheeks. In addition, having been a star for 2 lifetimes, you naturally know how to present yourself at your best when taking photos, and Su Fashion, a senior reporter with excellent photography skills, took the photos. All in all, no matter how haggard Xiaoling is, she can still take a picture of a flower. Gu Lin couldn't bear it anymore. End of this chapter.